Why don't you tell me now about the RC part? RC part was a big thing, a big deal. You were in it for a long time, and you were the president of the club several years, and you were involved in several different clubs, and
Yeah,
and you were at pattern flying, and you went to contests and stuff, and you
in the SBA.
yeah. Tell me all about that part of it.
Well, competition flying was just a matter of interest, and it also while it's giving you a lot of pleasure, it gave me the impetus to start designing competition pattern airplanes and flying them, so I enjoyed that, and started going to contests and enjoyed that. Flew a Senior Falcon in my first RC contest, which is a pretty square old airplane compared to today's pattern airplanes, but the judges.
About what year would this be when you started flying RC?
When I started flying RC,
Yeah.
1960, 61.
Okay. This was after the pulse vibrator transmitters, or did you have some of those?
It was about that time.
Yeah.
They were earlier, but I just now getting. I was a little bit late in the whole thing. There were quite a few people that were somewhat ahead of me.
So this
I
was
was kinda
before
catching up.
proportional radios.
Yeah, oh yeah, proportional didn't start till, I'm going to guess, 63 or 64.
Okay.
When Phil Craft came out with his first proportional set. But I was a little bit behind the people who were in it then. There weren't too many people in it then. There were a few from the West Coast, and a few from New York, and a few from Carolina area, and a few from Pensacola. But they, just a few spots around Chicago. I forgot Chicago.
Yeah.
Could have been where Cade Kaspersky was from Chicago. But there were probably not 100 people in the country. They were really into the RC thing in the beginning, and they grew pretty rapidly. But that bunch, when we had a contest there in Marietta, and had our club put on an RC contest, and people, the good flyers came from all those places to right there. Marietta, about as big a thing as Marietta had in that sense, of getting people from way off to come there. But very quickly after that, of course, more and more people got into RC flying, so it got bigger, and all the major cities started having big contests. And for me, I just kept trying to keep up and get better. And my biggest triumph, you might say, in those days was at one time the Atlanta RC Club, which is just 20 miles from Marietta, but a little down the road, had an RC contest, and Phil Craft and Jim Whitley came to that contest, and I had the pleasure, I guess you'd say, the pride of beating all of them in that contest. I was talking about that Atlanta contest where all the big names came there, and I actually won, is the way I say it. I still feel that way, and I did have the top score for a little bit there, but then I don't know whether I'll tell this story or not, but it's the truth, so I might as well tell it.
Yeah.
If I don't care who he is. Jim Whitley was there at the contest, but Jim Whitley was the kind of guy who would do anything to win, plainly. Mm-hmm. And so he was not.
Now, was this with Pulse or?
No, this was full proportional by then.
Okay.
And
what kind of planes were you flying? You're still flying your Senior Falcon?
oh no, that was one contest right then. I went on to better airplanes. I think I was flying Lanier RC airplanes at that time, and while I was flying the last flight that scored well in that contest, Jim Whitley went to the judges and started lobbying them, as I call it, and convinced them that I went behind the minimum line near the crowd, and so they subtracted the total score for one of my maneuvers because I went behind the line, which if I went behind the line, that was the right thing to do. But I didn't go behind the line. But he convinced them I did, and they took that score off. That meant he won the contest. But I don't care because I didn't need to win the contest anyhow. But I thought that was pretty ugly of him. He was known to do that sort of thing, and he was a very good flyer. But he was the kind of flyer that had to have everything his way, or he just didn't fly. If he got it took off and his engine was a little bit lean, he'd just land right there and quit. He wouldn't try to correct it or anything. And he was always taking a long time to get ready and tuning his engine so he'd get it just right. And he did do a good job. He won the Nationals one year, not that year, but year or two later and went to Europe as a U.S. representative. So he did well. So I just feel good that I was able to fly that close to his quality at that time. But then all the experts began to get better and I didn't. So I guess that was about the top of my career. Then when
how many estimate just well, you got trophies and stuff from pattern contests.
Oh
right?
yes.
So
Yeah,
you must
a lot
have
of
flown in
trophies.
dozens of them.
Huh?
You must have flown in dozens of different contests
Yeah, I don't know.
over a period of what, about 20 years
Well,
or so?
20 years, yeah. But then I was gone to California and Tulsa and California for 10 of those years. So only 10 years of flying, you might say. But through the 60s and 70s, I guess I went to probably a couple of dozen or maybe 3 dozen contests. 3 or 4, sometimes 5 a year.
Right. And how did you do in those?
Oh, I did well all the time through there.
Yeah.
I never was willing to, I guess you'd say, go that extra mile. Jim Whitley told me one time he burned 2 gallons of gas every week while he was practicing for contests.
Yeah.
And I never did. I didn't have that much time or interest in trying to sharpen up that much. I'd like to think I could have if I'd worked as hard. He sure worked hard. I'll give him credit for that. And so,
Well, tell us a little bit about, just briefly, what is pattern flying? How's that differ from something else?
well, just flying is having a model airplane in the air and flying it around and seeing it fly and seeing the grace and movement in the air, the turns and climbs and descents. And acrobatics is the final word. And just flying means doing some of all that, but pattern flying means flying a prescribed pattern of events or maneuvers that are specified by the contest director. They might start with a loop and then next a roll and then next a landing or any sequence of events was usually changed from contest to contest. And you were handed a sheet of the schedule for this contest when you got there, and you would fly just that set of maneuvers as you went through the contest. And everybody flew the same set of maneuvers so the judges could judge one flyer against the other doing the same thing. And the AMA, of course, got into that finally and started setting the schedule for the maneuvers for each year. They changed that yearly and put out scheduling, and everybody around the country flew the same schedule every year.
And these maneuvers were judged by a panel that was looking for errors. They were looking for perfection.
Yeah, at the AMA Nationals, where they got plenty of people, they usually had 9 judges, and they ended up throwing out the 2 high scores and averaging the other 2 7 scores for every flyer score. In local contests, we were hard pressed to get judges. Not everybody wanted to judge, so we usually had to draft our club members to judge, and we'd be lucky to have 4, and so they could get a little rest once in a while. It's pretty time consuming. Well, they had to be 100% of the time for people to fly, so they had to rest judges for a while and put in some more and so forth. So it took about a minimum of 4 to run a contest. So anything between 4 and 9 was a good group of contest judges. And judging became AMA for a while. They had a judging category, a qualitative judging category, and gave official appointments to being an AMA pattern judge to people that earned it. If they judged a certain number of patterns or were thought enough of by other people, they could get to be an AMA judge. That didn't last forever. It's not in existence today.
And what they were looking for is like this loops would be perfectly round and entered and exited at the same point and stuff like that.
The description of each of the maneuvers was quite detailed, and the AMA kind of pushed that into effect with a national committee to get the description of each maneuver just so the judges would have something to go by. The loop was supposed to be this big and this even and all that sort of thing, and the rolls were supposed to take a certain amount of time and distance. Everything was specified very closely. So to fly in there, you had to learn all that and do it as well as you could. And even then, there was always a learning curve beyond that. When you went to a certain area, like if we went to Alabama to a contest, after a few years, we knew what the Alabama judges liked more than other things. And so you had to learn sort of a bias for the local judges, whatever they were. And when you look back at the contest results, during those days you could see very easily that the local people always won. Very seldom. There had to be a big differential of skill before a distant entry could win in a local contest. It wasn't, you might say, blatant or obvious, but it was there because you look at the couple of years' results and the local winners were much more prevalent than outsiders, which is all right. That's just personal opinion. You can't get out of that.
Right.
So that was the criteria for the pattern flying, and still is. That's all that I'm describing here is exists today.
Right.
The only difference today from then is that the airplanes are a little bit bigger and heavier and fly better.
Right. The ones now have
And
2
more
meter
expensive.
wingspan.
Have what?
The ones now have a 2 meter wingspan.
Yes. Any wingspan.
And the pattern planes differ from like a biplane or something. What's kind of the characteristic of a pattern plane?
Well, there are two things you judge in a pattern airplane: its flyability and its appearance. They get judged for appearance generally, and so they end up with exquisite construction and wonderful painting, and just very pretty if you like that appearance. But they're not scaled like real airplanes, as everybody knows. Real airplanes look like, real airplane models look like real airplanes. Pattern airplanes do not look at all like real airplanes, except there are a few acrobatic airplanes in the full-size airplane that models now, they and models are beginning to come pretty much together in appearance and general characteristics. But the other characteristic of the pattern airplane, maneuverability, is something that can be designed into a model airplane and of course a real airplane the same in very much detail. You make it easy to fly, where the airplane design does a lot of the flying and makes it easy, or you can make it very hard to do. And of course for a pattern airplane you want the airplane to do as much as possible. But the characteristic was that they were very maneuverable and therefore did these pattern maneuvers prettily, I would say, smoothly.
Yeah. What was your favorite one?
Pattern airplane?
You probably had some favorites, didn't you?
A whole bunch of them. Hard to say. Today, I can't remember all as I went through them. I went through a lot of them, but today I take the King Altair as my favorite, which I still had one of and was flying when I moved out here.
Right. Phil now has that one.
Phil still has it. Told me the other day he wouldn't part with it, wasn't going to fly it.
Yeah.
He wanted to keep it. Well, bless his heart, that's mighty nice of him. I appreciate that, but it was a wonderful flying airplane, and I enjoyed it. And over probably the 5 years that I flew it, I didn't design that. I picked it up from a guy in Chicago, can't remember his name now, who designed it and flew it in '74, so it was eligible for SPA. It's one of the reasons I picked up on it. It was not a true AMA pattern airplane.
Senior Pattern Association.
Senior Pattern Association,
SPA.
yes. AMA pattern, the SPA pattern is a little bit different, not much, but same principles. And the SPA flew airplanes from the 70s back only. They didn't fly newer airplanes. They didn't get into the bigger, more powerful airplanes, more expensive. The SPA was trying to keep old-time pattern, as they call it, alive.
Yeah.
And the old-time airplanes that we flew in those days, which we all liked. And so the King Altair was fitted in that. It flew first in 1974. And so it was quite an old airplane, but with a little modern tweaking, it flew mighty well.
So it wasn't SPA legal, huh?
It was SPA legal, but it was marginally so.
I see.
Because it was...
Well, I know there was the Chaos and the Taurus and a few of those.
Oh yeah, there's dozens of them.
Yeah.
We had a list, I think, in the SPA of, I believe, about 150 airplanes that were eligible for SPA.
I see. These were pre-1970.
Yes. And we had a committee in the SPA to update that all, to pay people writing in and say, oh, I got this old airplane, I know it's eligible because I had it back then, and that sort of thing. We put it on the list. So there were quite a few airplanes, but an interesting view of the whole thing is there's 150 that are representative, you might say, of the number of pattern legal airplanes for SPA that pretty much epitomize the quality airplanes of those days, from say the 60s and 70s. 150 total designs is about the limit of it.